Hello again, welcome to the Stuff of Nonfiction lecture that despite sort of long, slow gulps of water, I'm going to try to keep in one video once again. So let's get started. Stuff of Nonfiction. We haven't really talked much about this genre. We've read a couple things. Annie Dillard's essay, Seeing, which you read the first week about how to look at the world. That was an essay in the classic kind of personal essay mode. And we read Colson Whitehead's piece on the bus, Port Authority, which was another kind of memoir, but sort of posed because he didn't use the I or the self. But so that's it though, and there have been questions about what this is. So let's try to figure it out today. Nonfiction, given its word structure, seems to be it's just like the opposite of fiction, but that's not exactly so. It's not just not fiction, right? People say that this is just the stuff of telling the truth, right? The literature of telling the truth. Yes, you do have to tell the truth, but you always have to tell the truth, even when you're writing fiction. There are kind of psychological truths that we've spoken about that are key. If you betray the reader's understanding of the truth as it is, they'll think that your fiction's bad. Poetry too needs to speak truly about the world. Nonfiction speaks truth, but it also sort of in a more factual base. Like here are things that have actually happened. We'll talk about this in a bit. But since your job is always to tell the truth, there's something more going on. And yes, writers, I'll put it here, writers will expect you not to fabricate. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to listen to them, as we'll discover later on. But nonfiction is, if it's not fiction, it's a different pose to take as an author. It's a different way to sort of see yourself in relationship with your reader. There's the sense of the nonfiction contract, right? The readers will, that should say readers, sorry. Terrible. They will expect you to tell the truth on some level, and that they will expect that what they're getting from you is a true story. What this means is that the sort of you that you put on the page, the personhood, the sense of the self, the I guess, is conflated, right? We've seen these before, yes. The author, I think I've written them. These are the ANC nesting rectangles that I love, and it's basically the author, the narrator, and the character. I don't know if it's deep enough to see in decent resolution. But what it shows is that each one creates the other, right? You've written stories where you've got certain characters. In fiction, you have this narrative persona that tells the story that you create alongside your characters, you being the author. In nonfiction, particularly when you're writing about your own story, these are all the same person. And this is where nonfiction gets interesting and weird and fun and strange. So you are the author, you're the person in this class writing for these assignments. You talk about yourself, you use this voice on the page that makes you a kind of narrator. And you talk about something that happened to you, say, 10 years ago. So you become this character that you can manipulate as a person. And they're all aspects of you, but they're not the same person. And so this conflation, right, where the reader can sense, even if you're writing about other people in your nonfiction, the reader senses that the narrative voice speaking to them on the page is the same person as the byline, as that this is a piece by blank. And that power is key with nonfiction, that you can speak very directly to the reader, and then there's this intimacy that you don't quite get. The other genres tend to sort of keep a distance. So those other genres, think about sort of what that means for what it is you're going to be writing these next few weeks. Fiction, you write stories, short stories often, or a novel. Poetry, you write poems. In nonfiction, you write the essay, right, which you've all written before, but maybe not in this regard. Essay is an interesting word to start looking up. Forget about the definition. Nobody knows what an essay actually is, but this everyone agrees on, that the verb is the word is an alteration of essay, coming from the old French essayer or what have you, which means essentially to try or to attempt. An essay, a trial. And this is key in that your essay is this attempt at understanding, right? I'll write that down. An essay shows a mind at work is a really great definition of what an essay is supposed to do. So what this means is your job is not to be right necessarily, or to prove anything, or to persuade people. You're going to make an argument, but that's not the same thing as like going out of your way to persuade somebody to change their mind. Your job in an essay is just to say, look, here's what I'm thinking about the situation. Here's where I'm coming from. Here's what all this means to me. And so you can just try something out, and then readers will understand, okay, well, that's one idea. That's one truth, the truth as you understand it. Let's see if there's anything else to... Yeah, okay. So, you'd be writing essays, and they're not anything like the essays you've written in classes before. So there's zillions of subgenres of nonfiction: encyclopedia entries, travel writing, journalism, like cookbooks. I mean, just really anything that's not fiction or poetry just falls under nonfiction. We're going to focus on just two in our limited time these few weeks. One is memoir, which you've heard of. It's very big in books right now. People, and has been for a while. Memoirs sell like crazy. And what a memoir is, an act of memory. Your job when you're writing a memoir is just really to remember something that happened to you in the past and write about it. So the purpose there is narrative, to tell a story from your past. And what that means is that when you're writing memoir, it's very similar to the things you've learned to do when you're writing fiction. The difference is that this actually happened to you. You're not making it up. So it should follow the narrative structure. You've got your climax, your conflict that you set up to the climax action. How it works in a memoir is that you begin at a significant moment that has set some sort of change in motion, some shift in your life, some whatever it is. A new person comes to town, you move to a new place, some sort of change. You begin at that moment, and you develop it until that change, or that conflict, or whatever is resolved. The moment of epiphany, which we've talked about a bit in fiction, but it happens. It's key in memoir. That okay, then I finally came to understand blank. That is your climax action in a memoir. That's everything you're leading up to. And once you've gotten yourself, your character to that point, your memoir is done. Compare that with a personal essay, which I'm defining as a reckoning between the self and society. It's similar to the memoir that you're writing about yourself, and often things that have happened to you that you've done. But there's also this looking outside, usually at the current moment of society, and seeing like your place in it. So the purpose here is more argumentative than narrative. Again, given what we said about the essay, that doesn't mean that you have like this specific point to make, like abortion is wrong, or gun control is wrong, or anything like that. It's just you're going to try to put forward some ideas and back up those ideas with evidence. So the structure then is a lot more loose. It's often necessarily so, as I say. Our thoughts don't come to us linearly, so we also understand and accept a sort of strangeness, a kind of digression or a looseness in the personal essay form, which you'll see in the ones we're going to read for this week. There's often this shift between the self and the other, the selfhood and society. So like, here's a story about myself, now here's a thing that I'm looking at and observing around myself in the world. And then back to the self and back to the world until some kind of equilibrium is found and the self has been placed in society. It's a very common path for the personal essay to take. And again, finally, to reiterate, the point in the personal essay isn't to convince the reader that you're right. It's just to show that you've thought about it, and it's to show the truth as you understand it. So we're reading an essay by David Sedaris this week, which is chiefly a memoir. This is something that happened to him in the past that he reckons himself with. And then Sarah Vowell's piece, The Partly Cloudy Patriot, is more of a personal essay about herself, her feelings about her country, and the sense of what patriotism and love for one's country is in America today. So enjoy those, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.